It's not easy to stay on budget in New York City for $20 for a week's worth of groceries. How did I do it? Stay tuned, I'm gonna break it down for you. Hi, Michael Akers here. Welcome to my channel, Ask Akers Nutrition. Today we're doing an extreme budget meal challenge video. That's right, I've got $20 to spend for the week, 21 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for all 7 days. Sound impossible? Let me tell you, this video was not easy to make. $20 doesn't go far in this city. First, let me just say this. If you're struggling here in the city to put food on your table, this city has a lot of excellent resources and programs that you can take part of that will help you get the food that you need for you and your family. Check out the city's website or call 311. They will put you in touch with a lot of these excellent resources. There's no reason for anyone in this city to go hungry. I'm a registered dietitian here in New York City, so of course for me, job one was to make sure that these meals were as healthy and nutritious as possible. That meant trying to get as much fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, whole grains as I could on the plate while still staying in budget. Was that an easy thing to do? Heck no, New York City is one of the most expensive cities in America. We don't have a Walmart or a Wegmans or some of these other large discount grocery stores. So how did I stay on budget for this week's challenge? The first rule I made for myself was I have to be able to walk to the grocery store. If I take a cab, a subway, a bus, I figured that's gonna eat into the budget like 25, 50%, maybe the whole thing, honestly. So I had to be able to walk there from my apartment. I set up maybe a half-a-mile radius from here, and I walked to every single bodega inside that circle, walked to every grocery store, fruit stand, farmer's market. Got to know all of my little local stores. I got an idea of who had what things on sale. While I was in those stores, I grabbed the circulars for the weekly specials, and I came home, I pored over those circulars, and I started to come up with a game plan. As I saw what was on sale, recipe ideas started forming, and I started to see, hey, I could take this ingredient and use it in that dish, and that ingredient, use it in these two dishes. And that's when I started to get excited. That's when I started to see that I could actually get all of these groceries for under $20. So I set back out, I went to each one of these stores getting specifically that item that I needed from that store at that price. But we did it, we got in for $20, and I'm really excited to show you what I got. This is our grocery haul. We got all of this food for $20.33, and I will quickly go through everything to show you what it costs. All right, so I got 4 apples for 99 cents from the discount bin, and also 6 bananas for 99 cents, 5 zucchini for 99 cents. I was pretty impressed with that. I got this chicken that was on sale for 79 cents a pound, 2 chicken legs, which came to a total of $1.46. I got 1 pound of oats for $1.29. I got a bag of lentils for 99 cents. I got this small bag of rice pilaf for 79 cents. I got these scalloped potatoes for $1.79. That's kind of the regular price. I got this box of macaroni and cheese on sale for $1. At the end, I knew I had a few cents left, so I bought an onion for 34 cents and garlic for 45 cents. I got this can of tuna on sale for 89 cents. I got this bouillon also on sale for 67 cents. This little small tub of cottage cheese was on sale for $1. I stopped by the deli and ordered 3 slices of American white cheese. That came to 90 cents. I also found these giant yellow bell peppers at the discount vegetable store. I got a can of spaghetti sauce, already flavored, and a can of evaporated milk for $1. I managed to find a dozen eggs for $1.79, which is fantastic in New York City. And as you can see, these were 99 cents in the discount bin. All told, the total came to $20.33. For the rules of this experiment, I assumed the following items in pantry: salt and pepper, some sort of vinegar, a sweetener of some kind, and some sort of oil. Here's the dishes that I plan to make. An eggplant gratin, which is sort of a takeoff of an eggplant parmesan, tuna noodle casserole, a chicken stew with lentils and rice, the sort of shepherd's pie, an oat and apple bake, and vegan ice cream for breakfast. I'm going to start with the item that takes the longest amount of time, and it's actually the base to 2 of the recipes, and that is the lentils. I'm going to make the whole bag at one time, and I don't want them to be super mushy or super waterlogged, so I'm adding 6 cups of water to the entire bag. Of course, you need to go through and sort through your lentils and make sure there aren't any stones or odd little objects, little leaves, little stems, I use this white bowl, which helps me see the beans pretty easily, and the curved edge helps me pour it into the bowl without making a huge mess. So while the lentils are cooking, I want to take an overview of the vegetables and see what kind of shape they're in. I know they came from the discount bin. I have these 4 dishes that I want to make, and that these vegetables have to go across those dishes, but I don't want all the dishes to taste the same. The peppers are a little bit moldy, so I'm going to start by just cutting off the major damage. For the pasta sauce, I know I want to intensify the flavor a little bit, so I'm electing to roast some of these vegetables. Roasted peppers are really delicious. With this small onion, every piece is really valuable, but I do want to roast some onions, and I definitely want to roast some of the garlic. Roasted garlic just gets an intense flavor, and it kind of takes a simple ingredient, makes it more powerful, especially when we have so very little. So I'm just going to put a little oil and salt and pepper on those and get those into the roaster. It's our fun trick shot from the roaster. They'll be in there for a while. I kind of want to blacken them. I want to get a good char on the outside. So the next part of meal prep is just breaking down all of the vegetables. You need to find out how much of the vegetables are usable and kind of divide everything up. I find that if you do it all at once, it makes the rest of the process easier when it comes to cooking, especially if you're going to be cooking for the week from a small shop like this. The vegetables are roasting nicely in the toaster oven. This is a pretty quick and easy way to do this. This can just go on in the background while you're processing the other vegetables. Meanwhile, our water is boiling for the lentils, and those can go in. So I don't want to overcook them, so I'll just leave them on a low simmer in the background because we're in no rush for them. I was really happy with these zucchini. It turned out there was very little damage to them, very little dents, and they were actually quite big, so by the time I got done cutting all of this, there was quite a bit of zucchini. I don't know how many of you do this, but I compost. In New York City, they collect compost at the farmer's market, so I have a compost bowl on the counter where I'm collecting all my scraps. Now I know that I need to turn some of my oats into oat flour and to oat crumbles. So I kind of want to get an idea of how many servings are in this bag. It says that there are 12 servings, and I need basically the equivalent of 7 days worth. So I know that I can take out about 5 days worth, which comes to about 2.5 cups. I'm not taking out that much to start with because I'm not sure how much flour a cup of oats is going to make. So here I'm powdering some of that to turn that into a flour. I'm going to be dredging my eggplant in some and reserving some for another dish. I'm also just checking the protein count of these eggs. Since there are 7 days, I only need 7 eggs, which leaves me 5 eggs to use in other dishes. I'm going to start preheating my pan for my eggplant slices because I want that good and hot, but that should come up to a nice slow heat. There's no reason to set it onto a high heat. It's kind of like when you cook pancakes where the second batch is always so better. It's just the pan's hot through and through. So I'm just heating this slowly in the background as I start processing my eggplant. Put a fair amount of oil on it. You can deep fry this, and going forward, I think I might. I was trying to limit the amount of fat in this dish. I think deep frying might have been a little better anyway. It ended up soaking up so much oil. Normally, of course, you would bread these. We don't have bread in this budget, so I've elected to make an oat flour, and I'm dredging the eggplant slices in egg and putting them in the oil to fry. One of the things that using egg does here is that adds a little bit of protein to the meal. So if you're going for a vegan meal, you could wet these down probably in a soy milk or just water. I think the oats would just stick to the wet eggplant on their own. At this point, while those eggplant slices are frying, I want to start sauteing some of the zucchini for this dish. Again, that helps to bring out the flavor in the zucchini. I was pretty happy with the way that these eggplant slices came out for the first batch. They're looking pretty brown. So I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to bread the eggplant slices and slowly fry off all of the layers to the eggplant parmesan. In the meanwhile, I want to check out the sauce and see what we're going to do with this. I did pick out a seasoned tomato sauce on purpose. One of the rules for this challenge is to use only what I've purchased other than the pantry items, so I'm not going to be seasoning it other than what I have in front of me. Here are my eggplant slices. I'm really happy with that. That had been turned off and obviously cooled. I did not pick up that scalding hot pan with my bare hands. I was really happy with the flavor of these roasted vegetables. I always recommend, if the dish can use it, to roast peppers. I'm a huge fan of roasted peppers, especially roasted red peppers. I've never roasted yellow peppers before, and I can tell you that these were really, really tasty. The garlic came out perfect. It gets kind of a soft, very deep, rustic garlicky flavor. It's very delicious. And I kind of wondered if I shouldn't have just done that to the whole head. That's what it looks like roasted. It gets very soft and smushy. So in order to get enough tomato sauce to make this eggplant parmesan, we're going to take our sauteed zucchini and our roasted vegetables, peppers, garlic, and onion, and we're going to give it a bit of a whiz. It's kind of a nutritionist trick to hide some vegetables in the sauce, but personally I just like it. I didn't want it to be 100% smooth. I did want there to be a little bit of bite to it, but we're bringing it down to a chunky sauce. Since there's not a meat in there, I wanted it to have just this consistency as though there was a little bit of meat in there. Now that we've broken down all of our vegetables, all of the composting can go into the composter. What I'm going to do next is make a filling that's going to go into this eggplant parmesan / eggplant gratin. I had a bit of egg wash left from the eggplant. I knew that I could use that to add body to the fillings, so I take a little bit of the evaporated milk and the cottage cheese, which is going to sort of substitute for the ricotta in this situation, and I add egg to it. I season it with salt and pepper. It's going to play the part of the normal ricotta mozzarella mix that you might stick into the center of an eggplant parmesan. This is sort of an experiment that I wanted to try, and it's based on an Ina Garten recipe called Eggplant Gratin. There's my dog Snickers. All right, I know that I'm going to use a bit of this sauce in another dish, so I want to reserve some of that for the shepherd's pie. So basically, assembling this is pretty easy. It's just alternating layers of the tomato sauce, eggplants, cheesy mixture, repeat. This recipe isn't a true eggplant parmesan because obviously we don't have parmesan, but it's very similar in the frying of the eggplant and the layering of the tomato sauce and cheese. In Ina's version, she uses ricotta cheese and egg, and here we're using cottage cheese and egg because obviously it's more affordable and it goes a long way, and really once it cooks, you can't tell the difference. What I also like is that nutritionally, the use of 3 eggs in this dish has added some protein. Decided that I'm going to use 2 of my 3 slices of white American cheese on top of this. I'm not really familiar with how well American cheese melts, so I just decided to break it into pieces because I thought that it's going to melt everywhere. Overall, I think going in, it looks amazing, so I'm really excited to see how this comes out. There's a lot of flavor. We've roasted the vegetables. We used the spiced tomato sauce out of a can, and we've used cottage cheese and eggs to create almost a souffle type thing. So I'm excited to see how that comes out. So I'm going to give that about 20 minutes and check on that. We need to just cook it through. The next dish that I'm going to start is vegan ice cream. I had seen this on the internet a couple of times and I was curious to try this on my own. So since there wasn't necessarily enough bananas to have one every day, I thought this might be an interesting way for it to go further. Oh, there's Mr. Snickers getting his payoff. The recipe is extremely simple. You just cut bananas into chunks and freeze them. Nothing too hard. I'm giving a check on this to see how the cheese is melting, and it becomes clear to me the cheese isn't really going to melt across the top, so future note is I would either cut the cheese into smaller pieces and lay it across the top, or I would just create a layer in the middle of the dish with the cheese, so that way it would kind of be hidden. Overall, this dish came out extremely well. I was very happy with it. I couldn't tell how many servings this was. I estimated it to be 6. However, when I had a piece, I also had a second piece, so I would say possibly this was 4 large servings or 6 normal servings. I was pretty hungry by the time I ate it. One note to myself was to cook it longer. It was bubbling when it came out, so I thought that the eggplant had been cooked all the way through, especially since we fried it. But the thicker, larger pieces of eggplant weren't quite done all the way through. But otherwise, the oat breading was fantastic. The cheesy filling was very good. So the final verdict for the eggplant gratin is that it came out excellent. It really did not taste at all like this was limited by budget or ingredients. I was really surprised, and I would definitely make this again, and to be honest, I have already made this again. Now, full disclosure, because it took so long to shop for the groceries as a first day, the only thing that I was able to make was the lasagna and prep the breakfast for the next day. So I knew that I was allotted 1 egg for each day and 1 serving of oatmeal. So I went ahead and made a small omelet with some of the vegetables I had left and a half a cup of the prepared oatmeal with a splash of the evaporated milk and water. I also used a little bit of maple syrup to sweeten the oatmeal. All in all, I would say that that breakfast was really good. I went ahead and hard-boiled the eggs for the rest of the week as well. That would be 1 hard-boiled egg each day. One of the tricks to prepping for the week is to get a bunch of things going at one time. So I'm going to attempt it here to make several dishes at once on the stove. Because each of the dishes requires some amount of milk, I'm checking to see how much evaporated milk I have in total. Evaporated milk works in a 1-to-1 basis, so I can add just as much water to it to make milk, or I can use it as a concentrate in place of cream. I have a finite amount of vegetables, and I have 3 dishes that I want to make. A tuna noodle casserole, a chicken and lentil bean bake, and a version of shepherd's pie. So in each of these bowls, I divided the vegetables. I don't want each of the dishes to taste exactly the same, so I divide up the vegetable matter in just a little bit of a different ratio. Next, I need to break down the chicken. I opted to cut out most of the chicken fat, which is a more saturated animal fat, and replace it with the unsaturated fats of canola oil. Browning the chicken will help increase the flavors because I'm not working with the stock, so I want them to get a nice flavor. They're going to simmer for a while. All right, next we have to make the au gratin potatoes. That's a water-based boil with milk. I dilute the evaporated milk 1-to-1. I don't have butter to use, so we are going to experiment with adding oil to see how that is. My instinct says it's not really going to make that much of a difference because the butter was going to melt anyway. A packet like this is just full of dehydrated potatoes, which I thought was a pretty good value, and it also comes with the seasoning packet. So all we have to do is boil the potatoes in the water until they're reconstituted. That takes about 9 minutes. I also have to get the mac and cheese going, which is a little bit different process. You boil the pasta first separately, as opposed to the au gratin potatoes, which is cooked right in its own water. In an optical illusion here, what you're not going to see me do is swap the pans. I'm putting the seasoning packet into the au gratin potatoes and stirring that in. It immediately becomes like a cement. I think that I didn't add enough water, or maybe too much water evaporated. So the next time I would definitely add more water. Overall, in the end dish, I'm not sure that the potatoes were 100% cooked, but I'm not too familiar with those potatoes if that's exactly what they're supposed to taste like. Browning the chicken, that's coming along pretty good, and we can get to draining off the mac and cheese water. Might have been a good idea to keep a little of that starch water too. When you're doing a lot of dishes at once, sometimes things have to sit and wait for you to catch up with them, so it's best not to have a lot of time-sensitive dishes. I feel like the chicken has gotten a good brown coating on the outside, and now I want to saute that vegetable selection in the fat that's remaining. I chose at this point to offer a good amount of the onion and garlic in this because the lentils are going to be fairly plain on their own, and I don't have a lot of chicken stock, so I'd like to have this pot get as much flavor as possible. I know that I'm going to want a topping for my tuna noodle casserole, and again, we don't have bread. So I'm going to experiment grinding up the oats to a bit of a crumbly texture, and I want to add some flavor to that. I put in some onions and just a touch of the cheesy seasoning from the macaroni and cheese itself, along with a touch of garlic. I'm also going to add some salt and pepper to try to give it some flavor, and of course the fat. You always add fat to crumbly toppings. It smelled really, really good, and in the end, it actually smelled as though I had used some of those dried turkey onions on top. Worked out better than I thought it was going to. I might have added just a little more fat. I also opted to only use the zucchini in the tuna noodle casserole. I tried to think about what are usual vegetables in tuna noodle, so I felt as though peppers might be a little bit out of place, so I thought I was just going to go with the zucchini, and I just wanted to chop it up to more the consistency and more the size, really, of the noodles. Sort of along the same thinking, I decided that I wanted to chop up the vegetables for the shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie traditionally has carrots, celery, onion, garlic. It can have peas in it as well, but usually it has ground beef in it. And there's a certain texture that, since we weren't going to be having ground beef, I wanted the texture to kind of mimic it. I'm using the rest of my garlic and onion in the dish as well. At this point, I want to give all of those vegetables a small saute as well. Meanwhile, the vegetables have sauteed to my liking for the chicken dish, and it's time to add the water. I was only able to afford this small bag of rice, which is basically one serving of rice, but it comes with a seasoning. And again, since I didn't have stock, I thought that this was a great way to add flavor to the dish without having to buy extra seasonings. I've never used this packet before, and the seasonings were pretty tasty. Plus, you do get a serving of rice with it. At this point, I'm going to divide the lentils between the two dishes. There was approximately 6 cups made. This is the chicken, rice, and lentil dish that's just going to simmer for a while, and this is becoming the basis of my shepherd's pie. As you can see, those chopped vegetables are about the same consistency as the lentils. All that's really left to do on this dish is to put the chicken in. Hopefully the bones will give the stock a little more flavor, and just let that simmer away for a while. This beef bouillon was on sale, and I thought that might be a great way to bring some extra flavor to the shepherd's pie. I've never worked with this particular bouillon before. First of all, I could barely get into the packet of this bouillon, and I'll spare you of how long that took. So it says to dissolve it in a cup of water. And then once I put it in, it did nothing. So I did reread the instructions, and it told me that it has to go into the microwave into super hot water. So I put it in the microwave. I made the water super hot. Meanwhile, let's just check in on the chicken and rice dish. That's looking fantastic. Now this is hot, and it looks like the bouillon's starting to dissolve. I think everything looked fine. It tastes pretty good. It was very salty, which I was not too surprised about. Most bouillons are. Shepherd's pie is supposed to have more consistency of gravy, and all this liquid just didn't look like that was going to happen. So I opted instead to just go ahead and add the bouillon directly to the lentils, along with my reserved oat flour, which I hoped was going to help make it more gravy, and my thick, yummy tomato sauce that I had also reserved from the eggplant. I just stirred that all together and let that simmer for a little bit. So meanwhile, it's time to get on with the tuna noodle casserole. Because that cheese did not melt on the lasagna, I looked at the internet and found the method for melting American cheese, which is to add a little bit of milk or butter and heat up the cheese in it. And sure enough, it did melt. And going forward, I will keep that tip in mind, because that created a delicious cheesy sauce to which I can just add the remaining powder and the rest of the ingredients, the tuna with its water, because I felt like the water was going to have a lot of flavor to it. It said it was actually packed in vegetable stock. I want to add a little extra water to get everything good and saucy. This particular brand of mac and cheese doesn't require you to add a whole lot of extra ingredients. I'm stirring in more water. I want this to get as creamy as possible. I was really satisfied with this product. Look at this. That looks so good. And it was so good. I'm going to experiment. I'm putting my oat crumble topping on top because we don't have bread. I'm going to spread that out, and basically we're going to throw that into the oven, and there it is, all set and ready to go. Everything's all set with the shepherd's pie. It's ready to be assembled. Here's my filling. Though it doesn't have any meat in it, it definitely has a nice thick sort of gravy lentil thing going on. I'm pretty happy with that. Again, the potatoes, as they sat for a while, absorbed even more water. So it took a little bit of fighting to stir more in. I am not sure exactly what I did wrong with them, but they could have taken a lot more water. I don't know if it was me or the directions, but in the end, if I ever make scalloped potatoes again, add a lot of water. They hold a lot of water. They go on top. It looks very authentic. It looks pretty tasty. The oven's all preheated. Snickers approves, says it smells delicious. He's very happy with everything. Both my dishes are ready to go in. Because both dishes are pretty much already cooked, I'm just trying to brown the tops, so they don't need to be in there that long. So I'm opting to do breakfast last because I wanted to see how much milk we had left. I've decided that I'm going to attempt to make a baked oatmeal, or something almost akin to a cobbler. I'm going to chop up the apples and layer this baking dish with them, and then mix up the oats, sort of layer it on top. This week is all about casseroles. They make a large amount of food, and the servings are easy to get. Oh, this apple was self-cutting. These dishes are done. The tuna noodle casserole really exceeded my expectations, and I was kind of sad that there was only this amount Because I liked it so much, this dish only had about 2 servings. I would definitely want to double this. Let me tell you, that oat crumble topping really worked out great. Verdict on the tuna noodle casserole is that it's a small but mighty dish. I would definitely have it again, and I would definitely double the ingredients, but I'd pretty much make it exactly the same way. I was really impressed with how that came out. Here's the shepherd's pie, the final dish. This is what it looked like. As you can see, it made a lot of servings. This was easily 6 servings. Because of the lentils and the potatoes, it was quite filling. As I mentioned, the potatoes never quite got done to my satisfaction. I'm not sure what that was all about. I thought that maybe they would cook more in the oven, but that wasn't the case. A great substitution in this week would be real potatoes for these cheesy potatoes. The lentil filling came out really tasty. It was thick and gravy-like. There was deep flavor because of all of the ingredients that went in there. The verdict on the shepherd's pie is a really good foundation. I'm happy with the idea of it all. I would definitely make this dish again with adjustments. I wanted to sweeten the apples just a little bit. I know from making cobblers and pies that the apples take longer to cook than the pastry, so I wanted to kind of pre-cook the apples a little bit. So I put them in while I finished up the oatmeal base. I diluted 50-50 the evaporated milk to make it the consistency of milk, and I had 2 eggs left that I could use. And I was basically following a recipe that was hybrid baked oatmeal slash maybe cobbler. I took the rest of the oats and I wanted to soak that in there. This is our sweetener. I only lightly sweetened it. I figured each morning I could just kind of sweeten it to my liking, and I also wanted to see how sweet the apples were once they were done baking. So me personally, I don't like things to be overly sweet. A pinch of salt, and of course that's going to need a little bit of fat. There's no butter to put in there, so oil is our choice. The apples were looking pretty good. They started to get good and soft. The pan was pretty hot. I could see right away once I poured it that I didn't let my oats rest long enough. I really do think that those oats should have absorbed more of the liquid first. A lot of that liquid ran down in between the apples and out of the oats. So I was kind of curious what that was going to end up looking like. But I didn't have to wait long because 20 minutes goes fast. Overall, this chicken and lentil stew was really good. It made a lot of servings. The little packet did a pretty good job of seasoning the dish. I think it could have used a bit more seasoning, so if you have anything in your pantry like garlic powder, onion powder, or spice blends, this is a good place to use them. If you do have extra spices, I would opt to get a bag of plain brown rice instead of the little spiced rice. You can get a lot more servings out of this, and actually I've added rice to maybe some of the other dishes this week. The last dish that I made for the week was the vegan ice cream. That is just simply blended frozen bananas. I read the instructions. You can find them on the internet. They're very good instructions. They did say that at first it's going to start out chunky, and I found that the frozen bananas didn't get past a certain point very easily. As you can see, I had to keep blending and pushing down and blending and pushing down, so I'm not sure exactly if I was doing something wrong or the bananas were too frozen, but it took a lot more blending than I thought. But the directions do say to keep going, keep blending, keep pushing down, and eventually it changes consistency to kind of a soft serve. I don't recommend you try this at home, but I was becoming a little bit frustrated by the fact that the bananas weren't blending right away. But just like the instructions said, suddenly they sort of took a different consistency and they got blending. At the end of the process, it really did look like soft serve. I was really happy with the way that came out, and you can see here, you could blend just about anything you want into that. If you have cocoa powder, I added no sweetener because I just wanted to see what it tasted like plain, and of course the bananas were plenty sweet. It has sort of a neutral banana flavor. It's not incredibly strong, but definitely I think, you know, if you have cookies you want to crumble into that, or like I said, cocoa powder, or any of your favorite, you know, nuts, or probably peanut butter, I mean, you could turn that base into anything. I covered the oats for a little while because I wanted the oats to cook through, and I wanted the moisture to kind of soak the oats, and then I figured I would finish it off in the oven for a little bit to see if I could get kind of a crispy top or something close to a crumble. This is the final outcome of the sort of baked oat breakfast. Once the oats finished baking, they did in fact get crispy / hard. They sort of baked through in some sort of topping, which was kind of interesting. Again, this was kind of an experiment. So there was sort of a hard oat topping over top of an apple custard. Overall, next time I would soak the oats longer and let them absorb more of that egg milk mixture. or I would go ahead and cut up all of the apples and stir it into the oats and just bake the whole thing together. A normal breakfast would be something like this, and this is a lot of fruit and a lot of fiber from the oats. I was really happy with that. I felt like the breakfast was big enough that this hard-boiled egg could be a snack later in the afternoon. The food in general was really delicious. I was really happy with what I was able to accomplish on such a limited budget. I know that it took quite a bit of time to make each of the dishes in order to increase that flavor with the roasting of the vegetables, sauteing of the vegetables. That aside, really prepping for the week and doing all of that, once all that was done, those dishes were ready to go, and there was no further cooking really needed other than reheating. However, nutrition-wise, I was really happy. I did kind of an estimation of the overall weekly values and divided them by 7 so we could take a look at the average daily nutrition. First of all, we met the daily potassium needs, which I thought was a really interesting thing. The daily sodium actually came in at a really great place, which surprised me considering that I was using bouillon cubes and canned tomato sauce. We also hit a pretty good spot for the protein needs for the day. We also nailed the daily RDA of fiber. I didn't see that coming, but again, using whole grains like oats, lentils, all those vegetables, it's just that easy to make your fiber needs. So I hope that's inspiring you to get out there and put some of these things in your dishes. Fiber is really important. It's actually quite underrated. I'm probably going to do a video on it. Some things came in a little bit lower than I wanted to. Calcium was not surprising. We didn't have a lot of dairy in here, a lot of leafy green vegetables. Vitamin C, A, and D. D is always very difficult to get. Again, without dairy. The calories were a little bit light for someone my size, but you know, adding a little more oil to some of the dishes, adding some more sweetener, a couple hundred more calories a day would hold someone like me. Overall, the dishes were really tasty, and I'm very proud of how this challenge went and what I was able to accomplish for $20. I learned so much making this video. I have so much more respect for all of you who have already made these meal budget challenge videos. I love watching them. I love watching what you do. I love checking out your creative recipes. And let me tell you, I underestimated how much work one of these videos really is. First of all, I had to go out of town in the middle of making this video. So while I was able to shoot actually making the dishes, I wasn't able to shoot me eating the dishes. So next time, I would definitely plan better for the week that I'm doing one of these videos to make sure that I'm in town the whole week. Second, I underestimated how much time it takes to actually edit one of these videos. I've also had to get comfortable with myself on camera. I underestimated how much I don't like seeing myself on camera. So hopefully you don't feel that way, or you haven't even made it this far. So that's fine. All right, well, that's the end of this video. I really appreciate you checking it out. If you liked it, please click the like button. If you didn't like it, click the dislike button. It's a free world. If you'd like to see future videos on nutrition subjects, definitely ask questions down below. Here at Ask Akers, I will be making videos answering your nutrition questions. So if you got a question, put it in the comments below, and I'll try to make a video about it. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll know when I post a new video. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Ask Akers.